Steam is in the realm of $19 million per employee per year. I mean, they're incredibly profitable. It's got to be the most profitable game company on a per employee basis in the world. So I was scouring the internet for companies that were more profitable than Steam, and I did not find one. Yeah, really interesting article that leaked yesterday, so timely as heck. A leak from Valve's lawsuit shows that it employs around 350 people, and only 100 of them, actually less than 100 of them, work on Steam. So, jumping right in, Valve's structure, employment practices, and headcount have been revealed through an antitrust lawsuit against Steam filed by Humble Bundle developer Wolfire, which we know very well. The lawsuit alleges that the Steam is a monopoly on PC gaming, which may or may not be true, but that's not the interesting part. What's interesting is that hidden data from the lawsuit that was improperly redacted leaked, and it included data such as their employee count, their pay, their gross margins, and commissions, and other, really personal and proprietary data for Valve, and it's fascinating. So this is the headline for me. In 2021, Valve reportedly only had 336 employees with 79 employees working on Steam, which is an insanely low number.
That's wild.
It's crazy. For context, over 100K games were released on Steam that year, and the estimated Steam revenue this year is around $8.5 billion, which is a lot of money. A couple quick call-outs. The largest division, which is interesting to me, is their games division, which still employs almost 200 people. This data is a couple years old now because the most recent data they had is 2021. They're so predominantly a game development company by headcount. Their hardware division at the time of the leak was 41, which has probably grown pretty substantially. Steam Deck has launched since then, has been a pretty big smashing success. And last but not least, in 2021, the average employee of Steam was $1.3 million. So Warren, can I please have a raise?
So while the team working on Steam might only be 2 upticks, I think their revenue is a little more than 2 upticks. Might be a shock to our listener base, but
it may be hard to understand, but yeah.
This is super interesting. I have some insights here. So I used to work literally across the street from Valve when I worked in Bellevue, Washington for wargaming. And I had the pleasure to have a couple of tours and spend some time inside their offices. I signed NDAs that I'm maybe breaking by talking about some of this stuff, but I'll try to be selective of what I talk about here. Valve has a historically very interesting work culture that they've built. If you go in that office, it's totally different vibe from other places. There's masseuses available. There's personal trainers on site. There's a restaurant where they'll basically make you whatever you want. And there's some interesting things about the work culture. People, at least, this is a few years out of date, but when I was there, basically you had no fixed place for your desk. People were really invited to kind of move around and work wherever made sense for you to work. If you were collaborating with someone on a project, you just kind of move in next to them, and there was no sort of assigned placements, and also a lot of autonomy on what people work on. So I feel like my kind of naive brain, when I saw it at the time, I was seeing sort of a lot of the stereotypes of kind of the ideal Silicon Valley office culture that usually collapses. And I think the wild thing about Valve that I didn't really fully grok until seeing these numbers is somehow they make it all work in a way that is totally outsized and abnormal in a positive way. It's sort of like they've captured this weird ideal of what a tech company can be, a mix of quality of life and revenue per employee, to be frank.
Well, I think there's one really, really important caveat which allows Valve to operate the way it does, which is it is entirely private and is, I think, majority owned by a small handful of people, and they have no profit incentive to do anything other than milk millions, hundreds of millions of dollars out of the business a year. And so I think that is a really, really important aspect. It's if you're a private company, if you're a VC-backed startup, you have a different responsibility. You don't have the luxury of staying small. That is the core difference between these guys and, say, Google, which allows them to maintain their headcount and their revenue profitability the way they have. They're incredibly profitable. It's got to be the most profitable game company on a per employee basis in the world, as far as I can tell. And I did some research, and I'm going to just show you a quick graph that I threw together to illustrate the profitability level of this company. So from left to right, there are 2 bars here. One is revenue per year, and one is revenue per employee per year. Obviously, Apple, Google, Sony, many of these companies make significantly more revenue per year, but Steam is in the realm of $19 million per employee per year. For context, incredibly profitable companies such as Apple and Google are in the 1 to 2 range, and less profitable per employee companies such as EA or Epic Games are in the less than 100 million, so 500,000 to $1 million range. I think it's actually potentially more than this, and the reason for that is the number I'm using for their revenue is 2 years old. And I think the new projected number is somewhere at 8.5 million. So I actually don't know, but that's scale, 20-ish million per employee per year. So I was scouring the internet for companies that were more profitable than Steam, and I did not find one. The closest I found was a company called Citadel Securities. That was one of the ones that I found that were close. Citadel Securities.
Is that like the hedge fund?
Yes, the much maligned hedge fund that everyone hates, especially if you use Robinhood. They make metric fuck ton of money, and it's in the realm of 4 to 5 million per employee per year. And there were a few other weird esoteric consulting companies that were in this range, but I have not found any other company that makes this much money per employee per year. So if you know of a company which makes more money than Steam per employee per year, email Uptick or marketing at uptick.com, uptick.com, because I'm very curious and I want to know.
This is really wild. You know, you mentioned one side of being private. You kind of alluded that they don't have to worry about revenue as much. But the other side of that, and I think why we see outcomes like this, is being private allows you to focus on longer term moonshot style projects that are simply not tolerated by a lot of publicly traded companies. If your entire company is 300 people and you want to go after some sort of moonshot initiative, that puts a real near-term risk on your short-term revenue growth. And I think that's not really tolerated in the public markets. But Steam is a great case of like the benefits of staying private and how that allows you to achieve long-term efficiencies and opportunities that like simply you can't go after if you're a publicly traded company.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think this is like, I don't think this is really replicable, right? I think this is like a really right place, right time thing where they were ahead of the ball, own PC distribution, have a really, really top tier product. I'm a Steam / PC gaming stan. Like this is where I spend the majority of my gaming time and gaming dollars. A big chunk of their 6.5 billion is probably my annual input. But the one other thing I'd say is like, I don't know the details of the lawsuit. They smell like a monopoly. They have a 30% fee, which is incredibly high. It's commensurate with the Apple and Google fees that I complain about consistently. My understanding of the difference, how I rationalize it, is I think you can actually get distribution through Steam's algorithm. You basically live or die by the Steam's algorithm on a PC launch. And so I think there is some incremental value that they're generating over Apple where almost no one gets any organic distribution through Apple's store. But the nice thing is like Epic Games is a ascendant competitor, 12.5%, which is significantly less than the 30%. So I'm hopeful that over time we chip into the monopoly of Steam and push down those margins in terms of how much they're extracting from the ecosystem. But we got a ways to go. Cool. That's it. Take us out.
Thanks everyone for joining us once again for the weekly news episode here on the Games Growth Podcast. As always, the pod was brought to you by our team at Uptick. You probably know this by now, but at Uptick, we do games growth. We do all the work and build all the software needed to scale games profitably. So if you're building a cool game and need good folks to help you scale that profitably, reach us through our website. That's uptick.com, UPPTIC.com.
Talk soon.